Good morning, Matt Waldman. Guess what? There's like a draft this week. The NFL draft starts Thursday this week. There's a lot going on. Are you ready for it?
Yes, and may it be the only draft we see in our lifetime for a long time. Is NFL drafts and sports drafts. How about that?
This is for those of us in this business, the green flag. We like to find out where the helmets are going to be placed, which helmets are going to be placed on these players' heads, and we can sort things out. It seems like there's a lot of guys that are going to have a lot of opportunities. If you want to learn more about them, you should read Matt Waldman's rookie scouting portfolio. I suggest you go get that now at mattwaldman.com if you haven't already done that. Go do it right now. We'll wait. Are you back?
Yeah.
Oh, you can also go out and do any searching right now. Matt's on pretty much every platform. He's been on with JJ Zachary. Who have you been on with?
We had Dwayne McFarland on Friday on the RSP cast. Jeff Zachariason did a Reddit AMA on Friday. John Schmilk over at Giants Kickoff Podcast. Paul Perticchese at Saturday to Sunday. Tonight I'll be joining some folks in Tennessee. Well, I'll have that up pretty soon, but I just updated the RSP podcast tour, and I think we've got at least 20 to 25 entries in there of podcasts that you can check out. You know, whether you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, a Giants fan, or just specifically want fantasy and dynasty work, it's there.
Yeah, it's go time, people, and we'll get into some of the stuff here. There's some kind of like everyone's been talking about, like all the big names. We all know Ashton Genty. Every team in the league is going to draft him after the Titans draft Cam Ward and the Cleveland Browns take Travis Hunter. Everyone knows this. Like, and then the race is on for Genty, and after that, it's going to be 5 or 6 quarterbacks going in the first round. Matt is like, as always, let me just ask you this: like, how surprised would you be if, let's say, Sanders, Dart, Shuck, and Milroe end up being first round picks?
I'd be very
surprised, but not shocked.
I wouldn't be shocked, but it would
Right.
be more about how cynical it would be. It would activate the cynical behavior about the NFL more than anything else. So I wouldn't be shocked. Yes,
I think that's what it speaks to. Again, you're a league of 32 teams where you have 20 guys at any given time capable of playing at a high level of starting quarterback, it seems, because nobody wants to develop guys or give people a chance to emerge and learn their trade. So every year we're getting and all it takes is one team to fall in love, they say. I was listening to Good Morning Football this morning, Tom Pelissero saying Jalen Milroe, like 5 or 6 coaches he's talked to, say Milroe is the best runner quarterback ever, better than Lamar Jackson. I mean, so you just start hearing these things and a lot of it is smoke, but again, it takes one person to say, yeah, that's true. I believe that. So we'll sort that out, but we'll go through some names that are maybe a little further down the board. We'll mix in some big names here as well. But Phil Mafah, the Clemson running back, he's an overlooked commodity by the NFL draft media. Feel it or fuck it.
I would agree, because I think that the NFL draft media is hyper-focused on fast scat backs who basically flip the field or break away on a regular basis, and guys with high-end production. So when you look at Mafah, he's been productive at Clemson, and he can catch the football, but he's built more like a Stephen Davis, Leonard Fournette type. And I think that also there's a little bit of logo scouting involved, because some teams are afraid, I think, of some Clemson backs in recent years who just based maybe their idea is that based maybe on the Clemson system, that these backs aren't really well developed for the NFL in terms of their decision making. And I could see some of that, but I think that Mafah is a good between the tackles banger who has some speed and burst, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he winds up, as one of those 5th, 6th, 7th round picks who makes a roster and eventually turns his game into something that, at the very worst, is Gus Edwards like.
Yeah, I feel like that was the best shade ever thrown at Travis Etienne Jr. without using his actual name. Well done. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm sure that if you're channeling your inner Mike Dempsey, I think that could probably work out pretty well.
I think Mike Dempsey would say the Jaguars are on the list of teams that should be looking very carefully at drafting Ashton Genty with the fifth pick overall. They'll certainly be fielding calls for that. Another running back, the Orange Man, LeQuint Allen. How do we feel about him? Is he a future starter, or is he the next Bilal Powell or Kenny Gainwell?
Yeah, I think he's somewhere between Kenny Gainwell and Bilal Powell. I think there are a lot of people who see him as a future.
So we have a good season?
Yeah. Right? Could happen. Yeah, on a running back less team, lots of injuries. Put the guy in, and he could lead the way on draw plays and screens and little checkdowns, And I think I think Allen is a good receiver, and I think that he does have smarts in terms of in terms of his ability to, work between the tackles, but I don't think he's a very dynamic player. He's one of those guys that will get the job done well enough that people are going to be happy with him on a roster, but he's not, and when he starts by volume, he can deliver production for you. But I think that it's not the level of high-end production that he can give on a given play or over the course of several games, I think is small. And as a result of that, he's more of a permanent backup than he is, a guy that we're going to look at and say, yeah, he's one day going to be a starter.
But he is there's a long list of players who, in the right circumstances, are going to wind up seeing a fair amount of playing time. It's going to take the circumstances to be precise for him to get that kind of role beyond special teams, you're saying?
Yeah, he's a low ceiling player. He's a high floor guy, so he's stuck with a bunch of guys, probably like Phil Mafah and other folks, who, when you look at them, they have a similar score in the RSP. But as I would note, some of those guys have a higher ceiling. Some of those guys have a higher floor, and he's one of those high floor, low ceiling types to me.
Let's go down to the peninsula for the Gator. Montrell Johnson Jr., big, 216 pounds, fast, 4.45 40. Boring. Is that going to be that last attribute going to be the thing that limits him at the NFL level? Feel it or fuck it.
I'm going to say fuck it. I think it's going to limit the imagination of fantasy people, and it's going to limit the imagination maybe to a degree of where his draft capital is. But I think he's what people thought LaMichael Pirine was supposed to be, which was good at everything but not great at anything, who would be able to get on the field and do a lot of things for you. And I think Pirine's kind of more of a guy that he's good enough at everything to make a roster, but not good enough at any specific thing to actually get legitimate playing time unless two guys get hurt in the middle of a game. I think Johnson's one of those guys that really could be good enough to help out if one guy gets hurt in the game, and could possibly be developed well enough that in a Terrell Davis sort of style could be a good outside zone runner, or give you, early on in his career, give you good production on a carry-to-carry basis. The speed is underrated. I don't know. There's something about Johnson that I feel like he's going to be one of those guys that people in fantasy are going to pick up off the waiver wire after the draft, and he'll be like a 7th round pick, and people will be looking 6th or 7th round pick, and people will be looking at him and going, how did he get drafted ahead of, and listing like 5 or 6 names who didn't get drafted that they thought the NFL would like better. But Johnson ends up being one of those guys that ascends up a roster and is kind of like a Chester Taylor or Justin Forsett type who, when called upon, can do really well.
Okay. Only 2 FBS running backs had at least 1,600 yards and 25 rushing touchdowns last year. One of them was Ashton Genty. We've talked about him a little bit. We'll continue to. The other one, not so much. Tre Stewart, a lesser-known JaCorey Crosky Merritt, the great Wildcat back. Matt, feel that or fuck it?
I feel it, and I feel the stat drop on Tre Stewart as well. Yeah, I think there's a lot of comparable traits between Tre Stewart and JaCorey Merritt. He's quick. I think he's a smooth running back who makes good decisions, and someone who I think that can do some good work between the tackles. He and Merritt remind me of each other in a lot of ways. So I could see Merritt being that 6th, 7th round pick, and then George being that undrafted free agent who ends up, or not George, but Stewart, excuse me, Tre Stewart getting, being that undrafted free agent who actually, has a chance to make a roster and one somebody worth keeping an eye on. I don't think in fantasy you're going to want to add him to a roster unless he gets drafted, but he's a guy you're going to want to just keep an eye out for to see if he earns an active roster spot by September.
All right, that'll be interesting. That'll be something we will be looking for. Again, running back is that position, people. That's why we're digging deep here. You just never know when somebody's going to rise up out of nowhere and get something done. Wide receiver is a little more difficult. Jacolby George, Miami Hurricane. Is he an aspiring Jordan Addison? Feel it or fuck it?
I think he could be, yes. I think he's got a ways to go before he gets there, but he can do some work in the middle of the field. He's certainly quick and fast enough to work downfield and be either a slot or a flanker and be able to do a little bit of both. The big question about him is how good of a route runner is he really? I think that there's promise there with his game, but I think that the Hurricanes kind of limited him a little bit based on what they did in their offense. There's a lot of RPOs, a lot of 4 verts. One thing we do know is that George is part of a group of Hurricanes who had a lot of practice being able to work with their quarterback off structure. So that he's reasonably decent at that. But he's one of those guys that I think down the line you could see him have a range of being either a Travis Benjamin type, an older Hurricane who could get downfield from the slot and give you big plays and work in the return game. And at the very best, he could possibly grow into a Jordan Addison type who might even be a wide receiver 2 for your team.
That'd be interesting. Xavier Guillory. Did I say that right? He's so far down the list, I don't even know how to say his name.
Guillory, I think. And you don't like Arizona State, I don't think.
Well, he had a lousy season, right? Injuries were a problem this past year, or in Arizona State, he had a little issue with injuries, so he's kind of off everybody's radar. But he's not off yours because you're thinking maybe a future Mac Hollins kind of player.
Yeah, I mean, he's not as big as Hollins, but he's an excellent special teamer. He has skills after the catch. He is an excellent blocker and someone who runs pretty good routes, and I thought he caught the ball well. Was there anything that really stood out about him as a receiver? I would say more after the catch and his toughness and physicality for the game. He is coached by Hines Ward, and there's a little bit of Hines Ward-esque type of quality to his game. It wouldn't surprise me if Guillory ends up making an NFL roster and his game growing into the point that fantasy people become aware of him at least as a waiver wire gem as a bye week type of player.
But will he show up for games in bare feet and weird costumes? That's the real test of a Mac Hollins type player. While we're talking about Buffalo Bills or ex-Buffalo Bills wide receivers, Jordan Moore, Duke Blue Devil wide receiver, is he a Khalil Shakir clone? Feel it or fuck it?
Well, while my North Carolina alum is locked in her office and she can't hear me talking about Duke players, then I'll go ahead and say yes. I think there's some potential there, but I think what's funny is sometimes people have it in their brains like usually what we talk about is how people have kind of casted a player a certain way in an overly positive sense. I would say that Khalil Shakir was one of those players that people casted in an overly negative sense, saying that he couldn't catch the football, when in fact he's very good at it. I would say that Jordan Moore in that sense is probably what people thought Khalil Shakir was, which was a very talented player after the catch who can run decent routes, give you help in the return game, but his hands need a little work. He needs to continue working on securing the ball in a more efficient fashion so that he doesn't have some careless drops. But if he can fix that, he could be one of those slot receivers that emerge over the span of a few years and earn an active role on game day.
Interesting. JaCorey Brooks looked like he was going to be something at Alabama till a shoulder injury sidelined him there. Moved on to Louisville. Does he have starter potential after that move to Louisville?
You watch his game, and it's like from the release all the way up to the catch point, it looks really good. And then the catch point feels like he's been, possessed by some sort of evil spirit that is scared of footballs. It's just like the catch point work really needs work. And if he can somehow fix that, kind of like Quincy Enunwa back in the day at Nebraska before his neck injury, if he can kind of address that the way Enunwa did, we may be hearing from Brooks, because if his hands were as good as the rest of his game, he would probably be one of the top 5 to 7 receivers on the board in the RSP.
Interesting. Just quickly, what do you think of that? What do you think of Tyler Schough, the quarterback from Louisville, as well? Like, is there like I guess when you start going with the Frank Coyle Hindu school, he's the second coming of whoever. Going back to the day, like all the markers say, like, wow, Bo Nix played 1,000 years of college football. Did things like there's some similarities. Is it possible that a coach might fall in love with a Tyler Schough and feel like he's a guy that can run his offense?
Sure, if he looks at all the bullet points, that might be very well the case. If he looks at the film and has a feel for pocket play, he might be.
You'll know why it was 1,000 years ago.
It might be yes, it might be a little more foreboding, because there's certainly talent for Schough to become maybe a Jay Cutler type, and if he really just improves leaps and bounds, maybe he can become a Matthew Stafford type of player. He certainly has the physical skills, the arm strength, some of the moments off structure. But when you watch a player in the pocket and they have the pocket deftness of Daniel Jones on edge plays and the reactivity on edge plays, where it's just either holds the ball too long or he just completely short circuits when there's edge pressure. I mean, that's the most common form of pressure that gets into the pocket. So it's kind of like Kenny Pickett. When he sees it, he handles it okay, and if he knows it's coming. But he doesn't seem to know when it's coming as often as he should, and when it surprises him, he's not as reliable as some of the top quarterbacks who, when they don't see it, they tend to at least get away some percentage of the time. So yeah, I'm a little worried about Schough. Schough's kind of he's kind of that Ryan Lindley type that I think about, a player that who's got size, who maybe he throws the ball well.
He does 6'5", 220.
Analysts love the big arm. Right. They love the pocket feel, and then they not pocket feel, but they love the arm and the ability to fit it into windows and certain things that he does. But it's kind of like the soul of a good pocket quarterback is missing.
Right. By the way, I say 1,000 years, but it's not been quite 1,000. But let's just remember he was the backup to Justin Herbert at Oregon at one point. It seems like it's been a minute ago, right? So well done by him. It kind of brings up another point. I did a radio spot in Las Vegas this morning, and was extolling the virtues of one Ashton Jeanty and wondering why any team, once you got past the first 2 picks, you could start making arguments for why someone might think Ashton Jeanty is a good pick, starting with, say, the Giants, who just moved on from Saquon Barkley and then watched Saquon Barkley stomp the living K-Pop out of the entire world with the Eagles. And I was reminded kindly by the Las Vegas radio host, who would love to see him last until 6, that not every team is the Eagles. And that's a really good point, right? Like, not every team is ready to accept the talent or make use of the talent in a way. So the existing roster talent is the most underlooked or overlooked part of understanding scouting grades by fans. Feel it or fuck it.
Oh, I absolutely feel it, because I think what happens is when we, even as media, we do this too often, is we talk about how he had a starter grade or he could contribute right away. And I think what we sometimes forget is that just because the players on the depth chart may either be leaving soon or may have not given strong production just yet, that we forget that a lot of those guys also had starter grades or contributor grades, and they know the system better, and they understand how NFL defenses do things a little bit better. And so the deal is that you see draft capital, and you see the younger player with the grade that's comparable, and you go, well, that guy's going to be the starter. And the answer is eventually they hope he will be the starter, but there are going to be things that he needs to work on that these other guys may already have a handle on. So I think it's important that oftentimes, especially with grades that are in that in that contributor level or the rotational starter level, guys that aren't, and even immediate starters on the low end of that type of grade, that there are sometimes anywhere between 1 to 3 players, maybe 4 on the depth chart who have similar grades.
Right.
Now, they might not have the political clout to be able to get early playing time, but if the coach is overzealous or the GM's overzealous and says, put this guy in, I want to see him in the starting lineup, we got to give him a chance to learn and acclimate and he can grow, and then they overestimate that and the young player ends up making lots of mistakes, the coach is going to be like, see, I told you this is why I don't like playing rookies, and then we see other guys get in there. So I think it's important that unless the player has a really high grade, like a franchise caliber grade, and the draft capital, if he's got both,
that's the differentiator,
yeah.
Right? That's when teams quit lying, with the checkbook and the draft cap.
Exactly. So an Ashton Ginty is a good example of a guy who's going to be a first-round pick, who's going to has a high enough grade that I think you start right away. Luther Burden, Travis Hunter, I think those guys are in that tier. Maybe not Burden. Yeah, Burden too. He'll be a first-round pick, even if he's not as high up as people would think. That's one thing. But if you have somebody like a Jack Besh, who is, a lot of NFL analysts love, but he's drafted, say, in the 3rd or 4th round of this draft, it might be a year. It kind of like how people were like, Luke McCaffrey, right. He's underrated. And now, we haven't heard about Luke McCaffrey in quite some time now, and it's only been a year, but that's cooled off a fair bit, and then you're going to hear, so it's one of those things that I think it's good to have that perspective. And I know next year I'm probably going to add that perspective into my grading scale.
Right. Because it matters at both levels, right? It matters where they're coming from. It affects their performance in college, and then it's going to the landing spot. The same thing. The existing talent is going to be determinative of a lot of things as well.
Yeah.
I think I pay more attention to it obviously after they land in places, but I think when you're studying, what the player is in college, it should be taken more into account too as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just good to have that perspective. And so for me, I think what I'll probably add to people is, I usually state that in words, but in my grading key. But what I'm going to probably add is say, you can safely estimate there's, X number of players on most depth charts who have similar grades. And then that way you can look at it and go, okay, so Matt thinks that, Jacolby George could be a fantasy option, but there are going to be things that need to happen for that to occur, as opposed to looking at his grade and going, oh, in a year or two, he's going to be a starter. Just to add a little bit of a reminder there, because most of the time we love to get excited about this time of year, and I think it's important, and we're going to take chances on all these players in certain rounds, and but we all know in the back of our mind, like in parentheses, basically, when we say, oh yeah, I got a future starter in the 3rd round. If,
right,
right.
Well, it's really helpful if said future starters run, 4.3 40s. It's 6'1", 196 pounds. And that would be the case of the Florida Gator, Chimere Dike. Is he underrated?
I think so. He catches the ball pretty well, and he's a very good runner after the catch, very athletic, as you just mentioned with his workout numbers. I think he's someone that could give you that role in like a kind of a Puka Nacua type of player in terms of what people thought heading into the draft that year, which was he can work over the middle, he can be able to give you yards after the catch as a result of that, and he's someone that could develop into a good outside threat. He just needs a little bit more work with his routes to be able to do that.
Tex Johnson. I mean, we all know the story here. The 154-pound combine weigh-in seemed to be a killer. Are we overstating that weight?
I think that, like, overstating that the weight's an issue.
Yes.
Yes, I would say so. And I think that, is he ever going to be a high-end fantasy player? I don't think so. But will he end up being a nice contributor in the slot who has a long career of, like, maybe he's with 2 or 3 teams over the course of his career and gives you somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 700 yards as a receiver at his best? I think so. I think he can do that. And maybe he surprises and he develops a rapport with a really good quarterback and becomes a fixture. And now you're looking at maybe more a 700 to 900 yard range. And now he's a fantasy option in a lot of leagues. Very good in the middle of the field. Excellent quickness. I know people get mad or get down on his lack of top end speed because he ran only a 4.5 ish type of thing. Bob Harris, I know. Yeah, exactly. But he's blindingly quick, and this is the thing that I never understand. People go, well, for his size, he's not fast enough. And I'm thinking, the dude's a water bug, and he's small. Less surface area to be able to touch. If you're that quick and have that much acceleration, why are you banging on the top end speed when his job is the middle of the field? I mean, would you rather have a guy who's 230 pounds and has a huge surface level and isn't fast, in that area of the field and not as quick? You're just going to take a lot more hits and a lot more contact. Johnson also, by the way, when he does take contact, it's pretty tough for it. And we've talked about Ice Cube McNeil in the past.
I knew that was going to come back.
Yeah, a 140x plus, 154-pound guy who played in a tough era. So yeah, I'm feeling Tex Johnson as somebody that you'll probably add him off your waiver wire if he starts to make an active roster and you start hearing about him having a role. You don't have to worry about him now, but we figured with the draft coming up, here's a lot of players that we just talked about today that may be on the back burner, but they're worth giving you an example of how deep this class could potentially be.
And I think this is another example. Xavier Restrepo, guy that passed Reggie Wayne for the Hurricanes all-time receiving most yards, 2,844 receiving yards, 2 really good seasons, all-time record for catches with 200. He's not like up there, with the talk of the top of the draft. How should he? Let's compare him to Jacksonville wide receiver Parker Washington. Who'd you rather have, Washington or Restrepo? Feel it or fuck it.
Yeah, I'm feeling Parker Washington here. I think Parker Washington has more to offer at the catch point. He has more to offer after the catch. Better athlete, can give you a little bit of work even outside if you had to use him there or based on different types of matchups that you can get. Restrepo, I think, is more of a Braxton Barrios type of player, but maybe not as good. So yeah, I don't know. I think people are a little
pretty productive college career. Though, right?
Very productive, but I think a lot of people are overrating that a bit. And I think in the offense that he was in, it was very, when you run a lot of 4 verts packages or RPOs, you're going to see a lot of targets. And certainly he's a very good college player, and I think he'll have a decent NFL career by the standards of that he was in the NFL and stayed there. I'm glad my dog liked that loafer that he just brought into the room and finished up there. As you can see, he's now having the post chew up job. Well, I guess we're not giving those shoes away. So anyway, Restrepo, yeah, he's a better NFL player at the bare minimum of what you're looking for than I think a fantasy option.
All right, fair enough. Well, so in general, I mean, I think there seem to be a hell of a lot of players that we've discussed over the course of the last few weeks. How many of them are going to be super productive NFL players? Let's do it like this. There are only 2 wide receivers that will likely reach 1,000 yards as a rookie, and 5 that will get over 500 yards this year. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm feeling that. I think that the 2 that are likely to get over 1,000 yards are going to be Luther Burden and Travis Hunter. I think those are the two guys that are most likely to do it because of their versatility, their ability to run routes, their ability to and really play multiple positions. So I think that they're the most polished and refined players of this class, and will be drafted early enough to get that opportunity. As long as Travis Hunter isn't drafted to be a cornerback and then a part-time receiver, but I think he'll probably be the opposite.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like there's a lot of guys that can be something. I think landing spots are going to matter a heck of a lot more this year than maybe in the past because the talent is so evenly distributed. Let's look at some possibilities. Feel it or fuck it. You'll be higher on Cam Skattebo post-draft than you are pre-draft.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. Mainly because I think that he's going to get drafted early enough that he's going to have a role. And I think that pass protection, while it's bad, I think it's one of the easier things to get better at. So I think that he's going to have a chance to improve in that regard. So I see him as a player who you'd bank on him improving. And as a result of that, I wouldn't be surprised if I have him among my top 5 running backs post-draft.
Seems like when you hear some of the the buzz from NFL, people who talk to the NFL people that maybe he's a little more popular amongst them than maybe some others. And then other times you hear the exact opposite. It's that time of year, people. Everyone is lying until they start spending the draft capital. Terrance Ferguson had a really good combine, kind of surprised some people, the Oregon tight end. You'll be higher on him post-draft. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm down at fuck it. I think that he may end up having the draft capital that might make him higher, but I think I'm going to keep him where he is on my board, unless it's like a team that there's just a really good rationale for him getting being a fit in the offense in a way that will minimize his weaknesses. But I think he's just a high-end schemed up player, like a high-end player that you have to create offense for to make him productive. And I just don't think that teams can create enough offense for him to be fantasy productive on a regular basis. So I'm going to say fuck it.
All right, fair enough. How about Jalin Lane? Higher on him, the wide receiver post-draft.
Nah. The dude clap attacks the ball way too much. Yeah. I think he's Mecole Hardman. And I just feel like he's one of those guys that when you're a fantasy player, you're hoping that people take him in the round where you're waiting for a certain pick to slide to you. This is one of those guys that, it's like throwing zombies up against the wall so that, if you're or just throwing people up against the wall so that you can, use them as cannon fodder, for whatever your strategy is. I would say that he's kind of the cannon fodder for your strategy.
Let me go with another one, just to want to throw one on my own, because I want to say I think you're not as high on Jalen Noel as the field. Do tell.
I like Jalen Noel. It's just that it just so happens that there are just small things with his game that just quite weren't as good as some as other people may have, as there are with other receivers. I mean, he's still got a borderline starter grade. So do I see him, his route running with zone, he's got to correct a few little things there. I think that's probably a little bit of an issue. But, the speed is nice. The ability to catch the ball is good. I think he's going to be a good player and certainly one that could rise on my board based on where he lands. It's kind of like Cam Skattebo. It's like, that there are things that he can work on. He probably will address it. And with the draft capital, if the draft capital works out, he's going to be fine, and he's someone that will rise up my board. But, when you're not accounting for draft capital, you like to put the players there based on what they're doing now and what you think they could do. And there's just guys that may have lower draft capital, who one or two that are a bit ahead of a guy like Noel or Skattebo, but their draft capital is going to be lower. But I like to show that to you, because then when you have perspective, gives you perspective after the draft to look at a player and go, okay, this guy got drafted in the 6th round, but Matt's talking about these skills and he's on par or even graded out slightly better just on the field than the guys who were going 2 to 3 rounds earlier, this is a guy I should keep an eye on. This is a guy maybe I should take in those later rounds, and I might get a potential value out of that.
So our colleague Sigmund Bloom suggests trading up to whatever it takes to get the 101 so you can land Ashton Genty. Otherwise, feel it or fuck it. Might as well just trade out of this year's draft in Dynasty.
I think there are a lot of good reasons to trade out of this draft in Dynasty. If you're a team that already has a strong running back class, well, I would put it this way. If you're a team that already has a strong running back class and you're maybe 1 or 2 players away from really making your team a top contender, you can stay in this draft. But if you're rebuilding and you don't have the 1.01 and you can, trade out and get multiple picks in 2026 at an early range, there's a good argument to do so because this receiver class isn't particularly unbelievably strong. So if you have like 3 picks in the first five overall, you're still gonna pick early and you're gonna take picks in this class. But if you have multiple picks like after 1.05, and you have more like late first and second round picks, you might be considering it be worthwhile to just get more first round picks in 2026. Because tight end's okay, but I don't think there's a Brock Bowers in this class. There might be a Sam Laporta. There are lots of running backs, but if you're really starting from scratch, most running backs only give you, 2 to 4 years worth of production at best. And if you don't, it might take you 3 years to get good. And a lot of these running backs might turn over, or get hurt. So might as well, and this quarterback class is okay, but I think the closest thing to a potential star is Jalen Milroe. So you can pick your spots and maybe see where the draft capital is and maybe be able to save certain picks for players and hope you get them. But otherwise, I think, you trade out, you're going to get more picks. You're going to get them in an earlier stage. And I don't think this class is getting a lot of love from a marketing standpoint that the running back class is great and the receivers are getting pushed up. But when I'm telling you that there's 5 receivers maybe who might give you good early production, there's a lot of receivers in here who might develop, but it's good luck picking out who's going to need a long time to develop and may never get there from the folks who are going to have the work ethic to figure out the things that are seemingly minor, but they have multiple minor issues.
All right, one last thing here that just came up as I was watching notes shoot into my phone from the ether out there. 2020 census shows that 107,000 people live in Green Bay. This week, 250,000 people will attend the draft. We're an airport with 12 gates. There are roughly 5,000 hotel rooms. 1,000 homes have been rented out in the county for this one. Feel it or fuck it. You want to be there for this draft.
Fuck it. I like Green Bay. They're nice people. There's some of the most
cheese curd to go around.
Yeah,
I'm not having any.
You can make cheese curd go around, I'm pretty sure, but
you can with me around.
Yeah.
Fast.
But yeah, I mean, though I have to say, Bob, I'm feeling Culver's. Have you ever been to a Culver's?
I've heard talk of Culver's. I've not yet been there.
You're not going to be because you're not a big fast food person. But I would say if you're going to eat fast food, I'm feeling Culver's. I understand the love from that region, from that standpoint. But I will say this: Green Bay's a fantastic place, and certainly, I just think that from a draft standpoint, first of all, I mean, we're going to cover the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get to talk about all of that, but I'm not going to mince words. Honestly, like if someone said to me, here's a list, here's what happened and how it went, I'd be like Joe Thomas and I'd go fishing or Travis Hunter, I'd go
I've been
fishing.
to a bunch of drafts. I thought and it's been a really good time. All the people in the Philadelphia draft, the Nashville draft,
Yeah.
fantastic. And it's like there's a really good time, and there's room for everyone to rub shoulders, and
that's
go
a
to
good
festivities.
event. Yeah, I mean,
Right,
if you're an extrovert, it's a good time, and if you can do extrovert, it's a great time.
It is a good time, but I don't know that I want to be in a city of 100,000 trying to accommodate an extra 250,000. That might be a little much. You won't have to be accommodated if you just want to sit at home and watch on your television box with accompanying commentary by a competent analysts like Matt Waldman and Sigmund Bloom. You can tune in to the Audible channel, 7:45 to midnight. I'll be there until about 11:30. After that, I'm going, and we'll all three be on. There'll be guests. Joe Bryan will be on with us. That's on the Audible channel again, 7:45 to midnight. I'll be jumping on Sirius. I have hosting a solo show, a wrap-up show from 1 a.m. From midnight to 1 a.m. Friday night, I'll be on with Kluge and Alfredo Brown, 9 to 9:30. They're doing a live stream all night. 9:30. Yeah, man. So they'll be doing a live stream on the Football Guys Fantasy channel. I'll be on Sirius again from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. for another wrap-up around 2 to 3. Saturday, Dempsey and I will be on, Mike Dempsey, from 4 to 7 on the Fantasy channel, just kind of covering things. Might be a Matt Waldman sighting there on Saturday, so tune into that. Then Sunday, we'll do the post-draft draft on Sirius. I'll be drafting and hosting alongside Mike Dempsey from 3 to 5 p.m. So no shortage of me, Bob Harris. No shortage of Matt Waldman, because you already have your RSP. If you don't already have it, go buy it. MattWaldman.com is the place you get it. And the post-draft release will be out post-draft.
It will be
fantastic.
Yeah, no later than 7 days from the last day of the draft. It usually gets out earlier, usually around 5 to 6 days. And I usually provide a preliminary cheat sheet 2 to 3 days after the draft for those of you who are like, my draft's like the Monday after the weekend of the draft. Do you have anything you can provide me? I'll give you a temporary, like a tentative cheat sheet. There'll be lots of changes or potential for lots of changes. Sometimes there aren't, but there can be that. But I'm not going to be available to answer emails and that kind of thing during that week. But you'll have a cheat sheet that you can work with to begin with, as long as you have the understanding that there may be some changes.
Get it, and then come back here next week. We'll be back on Monday for another Feel It or Fuck It, a post-draft edition. We'll have lots to feel, lots to fuck, and probably be all kinds of shenanigans going on in the first show post-draft, when we can start sorting out the landing spots and assessing some fantasy values for the pieces that we're most interested in. Matt Waldman, goodbye. I love you. I'm Bob Harris. Over and out.
Thanks for putting up with me. All right.